The FBI has missed the mark on many recent tragedies in America, everything from preventing mass shootings to holding the Biden crime family accountable. Here now to assess the ongoing issues at the FBI and how Republicans will hold the powerful accountable is Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Chairman, really good to have you. I know, speaking for a lot of my audience, they were looking forward to Jim Jordan holding the gavel. The silver lining is you will be chairing some of the committees that will hold truth to power, some of the criminals in D.C. to holding them accountable. You continue to do that, sir.
Yeah. No, well, look, Mike Johnson's going to do a great job. Mike's a friend. He's a member of the Judiciary Committee. He's a member of the Select Committee on the Weaponization of Government. Great guy, good man, good Christian man. I think he's going to do an outstanding job as our speaker, and we got to get back to work for the American people, which is exactly what we're focused on doing.
Congressman, with the tragedy in Maine and combined with what's going on in the Middle East right now, I would say right now is the time to be protecting our Second Amendment rights, not looking for ways to undermine them. Talk to us about what's going on in D.C.
Well, I assume the left will be on their typical, move to take away people's Second Amendment liberties. I always tell folks the Second Amendment's right next to the First because it's pretty darn important. So we can't go that direction. We should be protecting Americans' liberties. I think the real problem here is, and of course our thoughts, our prayers are with the folks and the families who've been impacted in such a devastating way there in Maine. And of course, what's the violence that's going on in our dearest and closest friend, the state of Israel. But I do think there's this attitude out there where there's just not the same respect for the sanctity and the preciousness of human life. And it's scary, and it's a cultural thing, it's a values thing, and it really troubles me. I mean, we're all precious gifts. The life is a precious gift from God, and we should understand that. But some people, for whatever crazy reason, evil reason, just don't see it that way. And that is the real thing I think we need to talk about and focus on. And then, of course, the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment is designed to protect your liberties, protect your family, your property, your rights. We certainly don't want to diminish those liberties at all.
Congressman, there are some of your colleagues in the House who are protecting the right for people to, I guess, be pro-Palestinian, maybe be pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC. There are those who think they should be censored for this stance. Where do you stand on this?
I haven't seen the resolution, but look, I'm as pro-Israel as we can be. This terrible, sick, anti-Semitic language we see on college campuses and from others is as wrong could be. But in America, we have the First Amendment, so we got to be awful careful. You know, one of the things we've been doing on the Judiciary Committee is highlighting where the Biden administration was going after Americans, labeling their speech as, quote, misinformation, disinformation, when it wasn't. I mean, they went after Robert F. Kennedy, their presidential primary opponent, the third day of this administration for tweeting out something that was factual, that was true. And they said, well, the context creates some misinformation. Baloney. So we got to be real careful about that. I want to take a look at the resolution itself, the censure resolution. But look, the First Amendment is critical. A robust First Amendment is one of the hallmarks of our great country and the hallmarks of freedom. So we got to be careful about this. Indeed,
indeed. You're talking to a libertarian, a constitutional libertarian right here. Would tend to agree with you vehemently. Sir, I believe it was today, Chuck Grassley put out a letter showing that he had up to 40 sources saying there are some illegal things going on in the Biden family. Now, you're part of the groups that are holding truth to power in these people. Will we see perp walks? Will we see a Biden presenting himself or herself in front of you?
Well, we're compiling a lot of evidence, and it's, I think, pretty interesting what we've now learned. We're focused more on what took place at the Justice Department. Of course, Chairman Comer is focused on the banking records and these shell companies and all the millions and millions of dollars and the brand that was being sold and all the stuff that's been done there. And the two whistleblowers who came forward fit into this, into both committees' investigations. So I will tell you this: we had a very interesting interview with the former U.S. attorney from the Western District of Pennsylvania, who was tasked by then Attorney General Bill Barr to be the clearinghouse for all information related to Ukraine and Hunter Biden. So back on January 3rd, 2020, Scott Brady, U.S. Attorney in Pennsylvania, is tasked with this by the United States Attorney General. We interviewed Mr. Brady. He did this for 10 months during 2020. And it was so interesting what he had to say, because I asked him the question. I said, when did you learn about the laptop? Now, remember, he gets a job on January 3rd, 2020. And he tells the FBI, give us information, we'll assess it, we'll be the clearinghouse, just like the Attorney General has asked us to do. We'll get that to the proper U.S. attorney so they can proceed with their investigations. He asked the FBI to give him information. He didn't learn about the laptop until it came public in the New York Post story, October 14th. So for 10 months, they kept that information from him. They also kept from him for 6 months the confidential human source who was the basis for the 1023 form, where it talked about Burisma paying the Bidens all this money. They figured out there was this source. They got to interview the source, and the source told, based on their interview with the confidential human source, they said, we found him or her to be credible. So this is how bad it was. What the FBI was pushing back on the investigation.
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm reminded of a couple days ago, the check that we saw James Biden send to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden cashed a $200,000 check the very next day that James Biden got it from a foreign source. Is that the smoking? American people are looking at you right now, Chairman, and saying, yeah, I know, we know all that, but when are we going to see the perp walk? Because we all know it should be here right now.
Yeah, we're going to continue to do our work. Our job is, we're in the impeachment inquiry phase of our constitutional duty to do oversight. So we continue to compile the evidence. If we think that evidence warrants moving to the next step, then we will do that. But we have to compile that and put it all together in a way that I think it's easily understandable. I think right now the Burisma example is so compelling because Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma. Second, he's not qualified to be on the board. Third, the Burisma executives ask Hunter Biden to give him help from the pressure they're facing from the prosecutor in Ukraine. The very day he gets that request from Burisma, he gets on the phone and calls his dad. And within a week, his dad, then Vice President Joe Biden, goes to Ukraine and starts the process to fire the very prosecutor who was applying the pressure. Now, that looks pretty bad, but that all happened in a compressed time frame there while he was vice president. And then you add to it the check that you just talked about and other evidence we're getting. I think it begins to tell a pretty compelling story.
Oh, we're gonna look for that story very quickly, sir. I know you got to go. There's been rumor, there's been reports, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt that Mark Meadows, former chief of staff to Trump, may have, at one point I read, may have worn a wire while he was chief of staff. I know Mark very well. You know Mark, you're good friends. I just don't believe any of this. Do you know anything about this? Has he turned on Trump? Can you tell us what you know?
I don't, but I don't believe anything that gets written about from so many people in the mainstream press. I don't believe Mark would do that. Mark's a good friend, but I don't know. But I trust that Mark thinks the world of President Trump, as do I, and I know you do as well, Eric. I want him to be our next president. I think Mark's the same place, and Mark is a good man. So I don't believe what the press writes about him.
I will leave it right there, and thank you so much, Congressman Jim Jordan. Chairman, thank you for being here.
You bet, Eric. Thank you.